My name is Alexandra. Alex, to anyone who's ever felt close enough to shorten it. I was 38 when I finally understood that everything I'd built, my career, my composure, my so-called stability, had quietly become a cage. A beautiful one, polished and expensive, but a cage nonetheless. And the bars. They were made of obligation. The message arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, exactly 1 week before Christmas. My phone buzzed against the stone countertop of my apartment, the sound sharp in the silence. I remember thinking it was probably a work notification. Instead, it was my mother. "We need space. Please don't reach out. This family needs time to heal without your constant drama." I read it 3 times. Then a 4th. The word drama pressed down on my chest like a familiar weight. For over a decade, that word had been their favorite weapon. Any time I questioned an expense, asked for boundaries, or admitted exhaustion, it was drama. A convenient label that erased my feelings and reframed my resistance as cruelty. My parents, Carol and David, lived in the same suburban house where I grew up. Respectable, comfortable, entirely subsidized by me. My younger sister, Isabella, Bella, was the family's delicate soul. An artist, dreamer. At 32, she still spoke about finding herself, while I quietly funded her search. It hadn't started this way. When my father retired early and his pension came up short, I helped with the mortgage. When my mother decided she didn't want to work anymore, I told myself family took care of family. I was in my mid-20s then, newly successful in tech consulting, proud that I could help. But help had a way of expanding. The mortgage became utilities. Utilities became insurance. Insurance became credit cards. When Bella graduated with an art degree and declared traditional work suffocating, I added her car payment, phone bill, and rent to my growing list of responsibilities. They called it support. They called us a team. But teams take turns pulling. I never got a turn to rest. Every attempt to slow the spending was met with emotional backlash. When my parents joined a country club they couldn't afford, my hesitation became an attack on their health. When I suggested Bella start with a modest studio instead of a luxury loft, I was accused of crushing her dreams. Each time I folded. Each time another automatic payment appeared on my bank statement. By the time that text arrived, the roles were fixed. They lived freely, financed silently. And any reminder that money was finite made me the villain. Standing alone in my apartment, I expected guilt to wash over me. It always did. But this time something else surfaced: clarity. Cold. Sharp. Undeniable. They had finally said it out loud. They didn't want me. They wanted what I provided. And transactions, I realized, could be ended. My fingers didn't shake when I typed my reply. Understood. I'll cancel my direct deposits on Monday. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The message delivered. No response followed, just silence. For the first time in years, I didn't feel cruel. Felt free. Like someone who had just discovered the door of their prison was never locked at all. I thought the silence meant it was over. I was wrong. It was only the opening move. And Christmas was about to expose everything. Christmas had always been my family's favorite performance. Not for warmth or connection, but for appearances. And every year, I was the unseen sponsor behind the spectacle. This time, my mother decided our usual dinner wasn't special enough. She found a historic inn with a private dining room, roaring fireplaces, and a dedicated waitstaff. For people. Thousands of dollars. "It'll be a memory," she'd said sweetly. "Just family." I already knew what that meant. I'd be present but irrelevant. A wallet with a pulse. Bella emailed me the deposit request. No greeting. No please. Paid it. A week later, during a conference call, my phone exploded with Bella's name. I answered, worried something was wrong. "Mom's card got declined," she said brightly. "We're at the mall and I found the perfect dress for Christmas dinner. They're holding it for an hour." "How much?" "Yes." "Was $750. Something inside me finally resisted. No. The word felt foreign. Powerful. The fallout was immediate. Tears. Accusations. Calls from my father about generosity and spirit and family unity. The familiar speech, delivered in that calm, disappointed tone designed to shrink me. For the first time I didn't apologize. 3 days later the text arrived. They wanted space. So I gave it to them, starting with their finances. That Wednesday night I sat down with a glass of wine and my laptop. One by one I canceled every payment. mortgage, utilities, credit cards, country club, Bella's stipend, or loft, everything. When I finished, the list was empty. It was terrifying. It was glorious. At 3:17 a.m. Friday, my bank sent a notification. The inn's payment had failed. Christmas was officially cancelled. By morning, my phone was unusable. Missed calls, voicemails, accusations, panic disguised as outrage. I didn't respond, because this time I wasn't negotiating. They thought money was the worst thing they'd lost. They hadn't checked the garage yet. While my family spiraled over bounced payments, I was already moving on to something else, something quieter but far more personal. In my parents' garage sat our family's history. Photo albums, home videos, my grandmother's handwritten recipe book. For years, I'd begged my mother to let me digitize them. She always said later. Later never came. That night, knowing my parents were out, I drove over with storage bins and the spare key they insisted I keep. I worked quickly, carefully, lifting each memory like something fragile. I wasn't stealing. I was rescuing. When they finally noticed, the outrage dwarfed everything else. Suddenly, the people who ignored those memories for years were inconsolable over their disappearance. They accused me of destroying them. I told the truth. They were safe. With me. And that was when I understood. I hadn't just cut off their money. I had taken control of the story they told themselves about being a loving, close family. That hurt more than foreclosure ever could. They wanted forgiveness. What they sent instead was an ultimatum my father emailed 2 weeks later. Not an apology. Proposal. They were willing to forgive me if I restored financial support and returned the heirlooms. I read it slowly, then again. There was no accountability, no remorse, just entitlement dressed as mercy. So I responded not emotionally but factually. I sent them a certified letter, a spreadsheet, 15 years of payments, every accusation of drama, listed beside the expense it followed. I explained the conditions under which the heirlooms might return. Therapy, accountability, real change. I wasn't punishing them. I was done enabling them. Sending that letter felt like closure, but real freedom was still ahead. The first full week after I cut the financial cord passed in an eerie calm. At work, nothing changed. I led meetings, closed deals, and delivered presentations with my usual precision. No one there knew that an entire family ecosystem was collapsing because I'd finally stopped feeding it. At night, however, the silence pressed in. I kept expecting the guilt to hit, the familiar ache, the reflex to fix things. Never came. Instead, I felt alert, as if my nervous system had finally stopped running a marathon. Then the messages escalated. First they were angry, then frantic, then desperate. Bella left voicemails swinging wildly between rage and pleading. My mother's texts were clipped and cold, accusing me of cruelty and betrayal. My father used only one sentence repeatedly. Call me immediately. I didn't, because for the first time I realized something crucial. Urgency had always been their weapon. If they could force immediacy, I never had time to think. Without my instant response, their world began to wobble. On Friday morning, the bank notifications started landing. Declined payments, overdraft warnings, missed auto drafts. I imagined the confusion, the disbelief, as they realized the safety net wasn't delayed. It was gone. That night I slept deeply. No anxiety dreams. No rehearsed arguments. Just rest. And that's when I knew this wasn't cruelty. It was recovery. But when panic failed, they tried something far more dangerous. Rewriting the story. By the following Monday, the tone changed. Suddenly, I wasn't just dramatic. I was unstable, vindictive, unwell. Extended relatives began reaching out, carefully at first. Casual questions, gentle concern. I recognized the strategy immediately. They were recruiting witnesses. My aunt called that evening. Your parents are worried about you, she said softly. They say this behavior is out of character. I almost laughed. Out of character for who? The woman who paid quietly? Or the one who finally stopped? They're losing the house, she added. Bella might be evicted. I listened without interrupting. Then I said calmly, they asked me not to contact them. I'm respecting that. Silence. Well, they didn't mean it like this, she replied. That sentence crystallized everything. They wanted consequences without permanence. Boundaries without enforcement. Space without loss. I declined to engage further. That night I drafted a letter. Not emotional, not defensive. Just factual. Timeline. Ledger. Mirror. I didn't send it yet. I needed one more thing first. Before I could close the door, I had to retrieve what they never protected. The garage smelled like dust and old oil. The boxes sat exactly where they'd been for years. Sagging, unlabeled, forgotten. Photo albums warped by humidity. Tapes stacked without cases. My grandmother's recipe book wrapped in a dish towel like an afterthought. These weren't just their memories. They were proof that love once existed before it became transactional. I moved quickly, transferring everything into sealed bins. Each item felt heavier than it should have. Weighted by neglect, not age. Driving away, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt responsible. Because preservation isn't theft. Care. They noticed 3 days later. That's when the accusations turned vicious. Money shocked them. Memory devastated them. You erased us. That was my mother's message. Not where are they? Not are they safe? Just blame. They accused me of destroying the past while ignoring that they'd left it to rot. The irony was almost impressive. Finally spoke once. The items are safe. They're being preserved. That was it. No debate. No justification. The response. Rage. Because preservation stripped them of their victimhood. If the memories still existed, then their grief had no villain. And they needed one. When rage failed, they tried forgiveness. My father's email arrived just after New Year's. He wrote about devastation. About hardship. About how willing they were to forgive me. All I had to do was resume payments and return the heirlooms. There was no apology. No reflection. Just a reset button. That email cured the last trace of doubt I had. I replied with a letter. Printed. Certified. I included a full financial breakdown spanning 15 years. Every expense. Every accusation that followed a boundary attempt. I stated my terms clearly. No more money. Ever. Digital copies of the memories for everyone. Physical originals only after sustained family therapy. With proof. I wasn't demanding change. I was requiring accountability. Sending that letter felt like exhaling after holding my breath for a decade. They never accepted my conditions. The messages slowed, then stopped. According to relatives, my parents sold the house. Bella started working. Reality arrived whether they welcomed it or not. Moved. Somewhere smaller. Warmer. Live. I digitized the photos. Labeled the videos. Cooked from my grandmother's book for the first time. I wasn't erasing my family. I was reclaiming myself. They wanted space to heal. I used it. And in that space I finally became whole. Sometimes freedom doesn't come from being loved. It comes from no longer being used.